And welcome back to the Lay the Points podcast. I am your host, Kendall Caps, alongside Jordan Chiro here. Jordan, training camps finally opened. I know I'm excited. How about you?
Very excited. Finally, man, we're in the dog days of summer right now, but it's good to see videos on social media of players running on to the practice field and just getting that exciting feeling back for NFL football. Man, it's pretty cool.
Yeah, it is. It's funny. I feel like every off season feels a little bit longer. The wait is it just feels like it takes so long. But this is once we get to this point, we're late July. Guys are reporting. Just watching Josh Allen signing autographs. Like, okay, we're getting there. Or preseason football is going to come by in a few weeks. So yeah, it's definitely got the juices flowing, I'd say.
And it's exciting because players that have been waiting for contracts and negotiations happening during the summer, players are signing like Kyler Murray getting his contract, and as a 49er fan, I'm just kind of eagerly waiting that Deebo Samuel trade or the Deebo Samuel contract extension. I don't know. I'm kind of antsy because I think any day now he's been working out in the Bay Area and posting Instagram videos. His trainer said he's about to get paid. So I'm sure they're just working through that. But yeah, they need Debo back. He's a huge part of their success. So hopefully that will come this week, maybe today, maybe even during the podcast. Who knows?
Yeah, who knows? I mean, you're right. They need him back. I get why he felt the way he did. He doesn't want his body to break down. He knows more than likely, he sees like Davante Adams, for instance, who is entering year 9 and has been healthy pretty much his entire career and is signing a massive deal. And he's not taking near the beating that Debo took last year, having to carry the ball, especially during the second half of the season into the postseason. But at the same time, that transformed your offense so much
Right.
and made it so difficult for defenses to stop and to slow down when you could use him like that. So it's such a weird situation, but I think you'll be happy. My guess is that, they'll be able to come to some type of extension and he should be there for a while.
Yeah, he was, but that's kind of what he does. That's what he's good at. So I think once, hopefully, he does sign this contract extension, I do believe because they did sign another running back in the draft in the second round out of LSU, so big bruiser back. So I think that they will change the game plan up a little bit and not give him so many carries and more like receiving route, yards and
Yeah,
routes.
let him play on the outside. He's a
Right.
receiver.
But I still think they will use him in packages because you kind of have to because he's just so good at it. So hopefully they work that stuff out and he's happy and all 49er fans are happy and we'll get this thing kicked off. But let's just, before we get into all football, let's just hope and pray that all the players stay healthy because during training camps and stuff, you know, um, it's there's always injuries that happen and you hate to see guys go down and miss a full season or more. So hopefully everybody stays healthy and not a lot of people play a lot in preseason and yeah, just
I
get
think after
excited for football
watching
again.
what
Yeah.
happened, last year, the Rams, the last couple of years, not playing almost any starters whatsoever in preseason.
Right. Yeah.
And then you watch the Ravens get decimated before
Yeah.
the season even begins. We're going to start to see more and more teams not using key names in any preseason games. It's just such a shame when you lose players and important pieces before a season that even gets going.
Right.
So yeah, I think that's where we're going. So, how about knowing how excited we are for the start of the season? I know you had looked at some of this stuff, and I took a look at some of the NFL over unders win totals. So it
Mm-hmm.
made perfect sense for our recurring segment, Back to the Futures. And there's a couple futures bets out there that when I was taking a look at them, I really, really liked. First one, the Washington Commanders, their win total in Vegas, 7.5. And personally, I really like the over. And here's why. For one, they get to play the NFC East. They get 2 games against the Giants, which, let's face it, that there's a good chance that those are 2 wins right there. They might split with the Eagles. They might get one from the Cowboys. So there's a few wins to be had in their division. but they play the NFC North and the AFC South, which might be the two worst divisions in football outside of their own division. So they're going to get a relatively easy schedule. And we know that their defense is legit. It's been very good for the last couple of years. And maybe I'm a little higher on Carson Wentz than most people, but I do Bleav that he is still capable of leading a team to at least close to a 500 season. I mean, what did the Colts finish last year? 10-7, and
Something like that. Yeah.
they had a very similar type team to what this Washington team has, but a significantly easier schedule. So for all of that, I kind of really like them. And plus, Dallas won the division last year. The last time anyone won the NFC East 2 years in a row was the Eagles back in 2003 and 2004. There's been a different champ every year.
Wow.
Until that doesn't happen, I'm guessing Dallas doesn't win it, which also would coincide with everyone's prediction that Dallas is going to take a step back this year. So I think the team that everyone looks to is the Eagles because they made a playoff run last year, or made it to the playoffs last year, and added A.J. Brown. They certainly should be much better, but I wouldn't be shocked if Washington was the team that took that division this year.
Yeah, Carson Wentz had Frank Reich last year, that was his coach in Philly. Was it Philly?
Correct. Yeah, he was the offensive coordinator when they won that Super Bowl. Yeah,
right. So they had that connection. I don't know how he's gonna mix with Ron Rivera. Like, I like Ron Rivera. I don't know. I would turn the other way. I'm not a big believer in the Commanders. I know it's like a new era, Washington Commanders. So they could kind of feed off, the new era of their team name. But I'm not a big believer in Carson Wentz. I think he's an average quarterback, but he did not play good at the end of the stretch last year. I mean, the Colts just needed to beat the Jags on the road to get in the playoffs and couldn't get it done, and he was horrific. So I'm higher on Dallas this year. Like, I know they lost Amari Cooper, but I still think Dak is the type of quarterback that can just sling it to so many receivers. I think he's going to have a lot to prove this year. And I think the Eagles, I think they're going to be one of those sleeper teams this year. So, I mean, they could easily lose both of those games. They might get one, but I could see them losing to Dallas. Possibly. I don't know. Like, it just depends. Like, that team's going to go as far as Carson Wentz takes them, and I'm just not confident enough that he is going to get them there. And he also has had some injuries in his career too. So I don't know. Like, I'm not a big believer. I would definitely take the under on that, just because I think even though they play those divisions, in NFL football every year, there's games that you just drop that you shouldn't. So for me personally, I'm not a big believer in the Commanders. So I would definitely take the under 7.5.
All right. Well, we can agree to disagree there. But come January, I'm going to remind you of that under that you took there. Okay. All right. Well, let's stay in the NFC East then. And I think this one we probably both agree on. And honestly, I'm shocked. I don't understand how the number is where it is. The Giants win total is also 7.5. I want to hammer this under as hard as I can. This might be my favorite futures bet I've come across all year.
Yeah. I don't know. I don't know what these guys are thinking. That's too high for me, for sure. I mean, 7.5.
To say that the Giants are going to go 8-9. When was the last time they won 8 games? 6 years ago? 7 years ago?
Probably. Yeah.
Yeah.
Probably.
2016. Last time that they won. Oh no, I'm sorry. 2016 was the last time they won more than 6.
And that was with Eli?
Correct.
Okay. Yeah.
I mean, they were 4-13 last year, and yeah, they had a solid draft, especially in the first round. I loved the pick of Evan Neal. Kayvon Thibodeau, I think, is going to be a really good player. But at the end of the day, in this league, you need to score points.
Right.
And I don't think they did very much to be able to do that. I mean, maybe they can run the ball a bit more, but Saquon has not looked like the same guy. He broke out and had one of the best rookie seasons we've ever seen.
Right.
And we have not seen that guy since.
Well, their offensive
And
line last year was bad, bad. Like he had no holes to run through. And then they
yeah,
leaned on Daniel Jones to carry the team with no receivers.
and they still have no receivers.
Right.
I'm dumbfounded. 7.5 seems really, really high. I mean, maybe they're a little bit better. Maybe they get 5 or 6 wins this year. But I don't see how they reach 8.
No. No. I mean, the only thing I look at is maybe a factor is Brian Dable that came from Buffalo, the offensive coordinator. But, like when you bring in somebody that has a really high powered offense, he's like the head of it. And like you come over to a new team and you think, oh, that's going to translate. Well, newsflash, you don't have Josh Allen. You have Daniel Jones. And Josh Allen's one of the best quarterbacks in the NFL. So,
And you don't have Stephon Diggs. You have Darius Slayton
right.
and a bunch of injured guys. Their receiving core, I mean, I feel like none of them can play more than 4 games without going down with an injury.
Well, they have Tony, right?
Kadarius Toney, was he the one they
Is he
cut?
still on
I
the
know they
team?
cut one.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
Huh. I mean, he was their bright spot second half of the season.
He had like
So,
a 3-game stretch, but again, it was like
right.
a short stretch, and then he got hurt also.
Yeah.
Like everyone got hurt. It's unbelievable. I mean, that strength and conditioning coach, I don't know if they still have the same ones they had last year, but I would have suggested that they maybe looked for a change because
Right.
their guys were apparently not very well conditioned.
Right. Yeah, that's crazy. So I both think that we agree that the Giants will not win over 7.5 games, and we both will hammer the under this season. Correct?
Yes. Well, and speaking of the AFC South, the Jacksonville Jaguars, their over-under win total this year sits at 6.5. I know there's a lot of optimism about them coming into this season. They brought in Christian Kirk. They have another year for Trevor Lawrence to find his groove, and they brought in Doug Peterson, the the quarterback whisperer, to try to turn things around. But 6.5 still seems like a lot to me for a team that their defense still has a ton of holes. They can't stop the run. I don't think they did enough to address that over the offseason. And there's still so much inexperience and youth on offense that 6.5 seems a little high to me. So I really like the under. How about you?
Well, I'm going to give some love to the Jaguars fans because they've suffered so much. So I'm not going to rain on their excitement. Ever since Trevor Lawrence has come into the league, he was touted as this amazing quarterback to come into the NFL, and he was going to come into Jacksonville and just be a star. I haven't seen it yet. He's had 2 mediocre years. So maybe this is the season. Maybe Doug Peterson coming in, the quarterback whisperer, is going to bring out just an amazing just offensive style that will fit Trevor Lawrence, and he will produce at an amazing level, and he'll just surprise, all the fans this year. So, and then they have their running back that he played with at Clemson. Help me with his name again.
Travis Etienne Jr. Yeah.
Yeah. And so he's a dynamic running back. Unfortunately, he got hurt last year. So he has him back. And they also have James Robinson as well.
Well, but remember, Robinson tore his Achilles in December. Now, one of the things that's interesting with them, and I agree that Etienne is a game-changing back. He showed so much athleticism and burst in college, and playing alongside Trevor Lawrence and having that familiarity, I think, will help. And he's going to get plenty of reps right out the gate because Robinson isn't expected back until late this season, if at all. So he's going to get plenty of run. And again, despite his explosiveness, I still have some trepidation. That it's a little bit unfair to just label Trevor Lawrence as a bust after his rookie year where he threw 12 TDs and 17 picks and didn't play very well for most of the season because, let's be honest, he didn't have a lot working around him. And the team certainly has more pieces, and they're better than Houston. I'll give them that. They're not the worst team in their division, so they might be able to sweep those games. And their defense, at times looked good. The game against Buffalo, they played outstanding. The final week 18 game against Indianapolis, they played outstanding. They had a few games where they showed they have the talent, but they were woefully inconsistent and had so many games where teams just rolled all over them.
Mm-hmm.
And I just feel like, even though I do see some progression and I do think Lawrence will be better in his second year, it's not going to be enough to get them to 7-10. 7-10 is that would be a big leap. Anytime you can go
Yeah.
improve, like they had 3 wins last year, to go from 3 to 7, that's quite a jump that personally I'm not willing to go that way. So knowing that it's sitting at 6.5, I like the under.
Yeah, I'm just going to stay away on this one because I don't know. I want the Jags to succeed, but I just don't know. Like I don't know how it's going to work. Like, sure, they have some pieces on offense and they have a new offensive minded coach, but I don't know how it's going to work. But I'm hoping for the best for Jag fans. But yeah, on that one, I'm just I'm staying away.
All right, well, let's go back to the NFC. I know there's one that you do really like.
Yeah, I was looking and I saw the Packers. They're favored to win 11 and a half games. Last year they won 13. I think people are. I think the Vegas odd makers are underestimating the value of Davante Adams on that team. He was because my brother's a big Green Bay Packers fan, and I was telling him losing Davante Adams is going to really hurt that offensive rhythm big time because him and Rodgers were amazing together, the chemistry that they had.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, Rodgers could throw the ball to Adams with his eyes closed. Like he knew exactly where he was going to be. So, like they took a couple rookie wide receivers. Their number one is Alan Lazard, and they lost Valdez Scantling. So,
Yeah.
and they have their two-headed monster running backs, but it's just like I know everyone's looking at Aaron Rodgers, be like, oh, well, it's Aaron Rodgers, and he'll be able to just carry them to 12 wins. I don't see it. Like the Packers played pretty well last year, and they had 13. So you mean to tell me that they're going to win, that they're going to lose one game after losing like Davante Adams? Like I just don't see it. I could see them winning 10, maybe 11. But like, I looked at their games this year, and they should coast in the NFC North, but they have some tough games. They play the Bills on the road. They play the Pats. They play
the Dolphins on Christmas Day, I believe.
The Dolphins on Christmas Day. They play the Titans at home, which is not going to be an easy game. They play the Rams.
Yep.
Away against the Eagles. So,
the Cowboys.
Yeah. So they don't really have a really soft schedule. I could definitely see them, losing at least 2 or 3 of those games at least. So I really, really like the under. And I saw that 11 and a half, I was like, no way Green Bay's going to win 12. No, like I just don't see that. Like unless they just like gel really, really well with these rookie wide receivers. But yeah, I don't see it.
I mean, I agree that the loss of Davante Adams is a lot bigger than most people realize. For the most part of Aaron Rodgers' career, he has always had a legit wide receiver one. He had Greg Jennings
Jordy
early
Nelson.
on in his career, and then Jordy Nelson for a number of years, and then Davante Adams.
Yep.
And that loss, and like you said, the chemistry between those guys, there were times the last couple of years where I literally thought to myself, you cannot stop them completing a pass.
Yeah.
It just didn't matter. He put the ball exactly where he knew he was going to be. He's such a good route runner, has such great hands. And I think Aaron Rodgers even touched on it at one point, saying, it's like having another quarterback out here running routes for me.
Yeah.
And that spoke volumes to me when you hear someone say that about a receiver. So I do think that is a really big blow. In the loss of Marquez Valdez-Scantling is nothing to scoff at either, because he's always needed that guy to go over the top, to stretch things, to open things up for 10-yard outs and curl routes and slants for Davante Adams. And now he doesn't have that. So it's going to be really interesting. I believe, did they bring in what was the old Bills and then Chiefs receiver the last
Sammy Watkins.
Sammy Watkins, right?
Yep.
We haven't seen that guy be useful in 6 years, 5 years, I feel like. So I don't think that moves the needle very much. But if I had to guess, the Packers are going to, especially knowing Rodgers is getting a little bit older, they're going to transform the offense a little bit more and run the ball a lot more than we had been accustomed to seeing them in the last few years. And their defense should be still really good. So even though I wouldn't put my money on the over, this is one where, like you with the Jags, That's kind of how I feel with this one. I think they finish with either 11 or 12 wins, and I don't know which side of it is. So I'm reluctant to go either way on that one.
Yeah, their receiving core is Sammy Watkins, Alan Lazard, Randall Cobb, and Christian Watson, who they drafted out of North Dakota State. So
It's and the Randall Cobb signing. I mean, it was pretty clear. Rodgers fought to bring Cobb back last year. They brought him back, and then I feel like the GM was probably like, "See, I told you, Aaron. Like Cobb he's done. I mean, I hate to say he's a
right,
great guy. Everything I've ever read about him, he's awesome, nothing personal, but his ability to play elite level football, I think, is behind us. So that was really interesting that he's back with the team, and I
yeah,
don't see him having much of an impact. But again, it's definitely a tricky one for sure.
yeah. I think the Vegas oddmaker guys, like, they love Aaron Rodgers. They think that he'll be able to just produce a double digit wins with anybody. So I guess we'll see. But I definitely like the under on that one.
Well,
So
speaking of Davante Adams, though, um,
oh yeah, I
earlier,
saw.
earlier, it was just recently, right? Like last week, I think it
Yeah,
was.
yeah.
He came
He's
out and
being
was quoted saying, anytime you go from a Hall of Fame quarterback to another Hall of Fame quarterback, it's going to be an adjustment. So we thought, like, when we started up the new segment, Like It or Love It, or excuse me, Like It or Leave It, and we were looking for outlandish takes.
mhm,
And that certainly checked some of those boxes. So I'm
mhm.
curious, do you like what he said, or are you just going to leave it alone?
Well, at first I was like, after I heard it, I was like, wait a minute. Has he played with another Hall of Fame quarterback outside Aaron Rodgers? And I went back and I was like, wait a minute. No, he was drafted by Green Bay and he's only played with Green Bay. So who's he? I was like, oh, it's Derek Carr. It's Derek Carr. There's nothing against Derek Carr. It's nothing against, like, I think he's a great guy. I've seen him interviewed. He seems like a really, really solid, good person, great teammate. And he had a hell of a year last year. I mean, he was great. So, but they're buddies. They've been buddies since college. Like, they're
Yeah.
great friends.
Yeah, they played
And
together at Fresno State.
right. So, like, he's hyping up his quarterback. He thinks Derek Carr is that good. And, good for him. I think it's a stretch to say Derek Carr. I think he's got a long way to go to get to Aaron Rodgers caliber quarterbacking. But I mean, good for him. I'm leaving it. I smiled because I was just like, and I was like, I told you, I was like, dude, do you see this? Because this is wild. But that's a part of this segment is, like, when we see outlandish things, like, we got to bring it to the attention and talk about it. But so yeah, like, I'm leaving it. I think that's kind of crazy right now to talk about. But I mean, like, he's got some time. I think he
He
needs
does
to
have
win a
some time.
couple. I think he needs to win at least a Super Bowl, at least. And but yeah, I mean, like, can you give me some of his numbers from last year? Like, he was really good.
So he threw for over 4,800 yards last year, only 23 touchdowns, but they finished on the ground inside the red zone quite often. Um, and his red zone efficiency numbers weren't uh, ideal, I guess I would go with. And he threw 14 picks, which was not great, but overall it was his best season of his career. The reason I kind of like it is over the years I've seen a number of Raiders games with him at the helm, and there were countless times that he showed to me uh, that leadership quality that I want in a guy. And I think at times we've seen the flashes of the elite level talent. We might not have seen it consistently, but we know that he has the ability. We've seen it from time to time. And I love the intangibles. I love that he's willing to get guys fired up. And some of those qualities remind me of Tom Brady, Mr. TB12 himself. Um, Obviously, I'm not comparing those two because that's just blasphemy. Um, but I think it's okay to acknowledge when you see certain traits that someone has in common with another player. And I have seen some of those same things. And also, when the game is tight late, time and again throughout his career, he stepped up and made big plays. But the Raiders defense, don't forget, up until last year, they were probably a bottom six defense every year of his career. They were a
Yeah.
stomping ground. I mean,
Mm-hmm.
it's really difficult to win. I mean, just look at Jared Goff. He's with the Rams and he goes to the Super Bowl. He goes to the Lions where there's no talent on the team, and they were 3-14.
Well, he goes from Sean McVay to Dan Campbell. I mean,
yeah, that doesn't help.
Like Dan Campbell, but Sean McVay is one of the best coaches in the NFL.
Yeah. And so, like, it goes to show, like, talent matters in this league.
Yeah.
And the Raiders, for the most part, did not have very much of it over the course of his career with now Las Vegas, with Oakland. Let's see, he was drafted in 2014, starter right away. He's had at least 21 touchdowns every year of his career, except for once he had 19 back in 2018. But he was thrown for 4,000 yards before that became the everyday norm. Now that's like a baseline number. 5,000 is really what you're shooting for most guys nowadays, which is crazy, but that's just the way the league has changed. But yeah, I've seen enough from him. I'm not crazy enough to say he's a Hall of Famer or has a Hall of Fame resume right now, because he clearly does not. But knowing the talent on this team currently and the rhythm that he has with Davante Adams and that familiarity and that the talent level all across the field on offense, to go with what should be an even better defense this year, adding Chandler Jones, one of the premier pass rushers in football, I think people are still, they're ranking them fourth in that division because that division is so stacked. It might be the best division in the history of football. You can make that argument. We've never had a division with 4 quarterbacks that good.
Yeah. Don't forget about Josh McDaniels, adding him in too.
Yeah, that's true. That's a really solid point. We've seen what he can do for years. And, I believe in the Raiders. I don't think the 10-7 last year was a fluke. And I think they're going to be right back in the mix again this year. And if like you said, if he's able to put a stellar campaign together, win a Super Bowl over the course of the next couple of years, and continue to produce at the level that he did last year, I think he could get there.
What do you think it would take? A Super Bowl and like an MVP or 2 MVPs? What do you think could get him in the Hall of Fame?
I think one of each. A Super Bowl and an MVP. And knowing, because of the new era of just throwing the ball around the yard that we play in, the numbers will be there by the time he retires.
Well, see, this is good because I wanted to ask you, because I just saw it and I was like, I thought about it and I got excited, and then I pumped the brakes because I was like, wait a minute. So now's the time to actually do it. Like, he could win MVP. He's got the talent. He's got a good offensive coach. They have a better defense. They have a beautiful stadium to play in. I could see it. I could definitely see it. And I'm big on the Raiders. I just looked at their win total, which is 8.5 wins. Yeah. And at first I was like, wait a minute, seriously, only 8.5? And then I was like, oh wait, they play in the AFC West.
It's tough sledding out there. I mean, they could go 4-2, they could go 2-4, they could go 1. I mean, that division is going to be so hard to predict, and that's part of the reason why Buffalo is the prohibited favorite to come out of the AFC, because they have the easiest path to a 1 seed. That whole Western division, they're just going to hammer each other all year long.
Well, I'm going to say right now, because I've been high on the Raiders ever since they got Chandler Jones. It's the guy I wanted for the 49ers. Like a pass rusher no one talks about, and the guy literally puts up high double-digit sacks every year.
Every year.
I'm hammering that over, because I think the Raiders are going to be the number 1 seed in the AFC West. I firmly believe that.
I think they win the division?
I think they're really good. I think it's going to be the Raiders, the Chargers, the Broncos. I'm putting the Chiefs last.
I mean, I honestly can say that I wouldn't be surprised if the Chiefs finish last, if the Chiefs finish first, if the Broncos finish last, if all 4 of those teams are so stacked on both sides of the ball. And honestly, I think Kansas City might be the least talented of the 4.
Yeah.
Top to bottom on their roster.
Right.
Chargers, I think the Chargers might be the most talented.
Right.
But because it's the Chargers, it's just so hard to back them and to pick them. Justin Herbert, I have like a little boy crush on that guy. Just watching what he's done since he's come into the league, like, it's exciting to see. But
don't sleep on the Broncos too. I mean, you have Jerry Jeudy, Cortland Sutton with Russell Wilson, and you have Javonte Williams, who's going to be a monster this year. Melvin Gordon. They have a good defense with Patrick Surtain on the corner. He's like one of the best corners. And you play at Mile High, which is so hard to win there.
Well, I wrote an article projecting that division about a month ago,
Mhm.
after the draft and all the trades and everything went down. And as of right now, that's who I'm picking to win the division is the Denver Broncos.
Man, it's going to be really fun to see that division play
It
out.
is. It's gonna be
Wow.
awesome. It's gonna be awesome.
Yeah. So, all right. So let's jump into a little NBA. So last night, you said you got a notification late. I was getting ready for bed and I got a notification from Woj. I was just like, And I looked down and it was about Kevin Durant. And basically, it had something to do with the Boston Celtics now. So I guess Boston is in on Kevin Durant now. And they're willing to give up Jaylen Brown in a deal for Kevin Durant. When I saw that, I remember watching the finals with you, and Jaylen Brown was like the best player for the Celtics in that
Yep.
series.
Yes, he was.
He's only about 24 years old.
24 or 25. Yep.
Two years left on his deal. Like I get the Kevin Durant intrigue, but I think this would be a huge mistake because it's not only Jaylen Brown. It's been reported that they would give up Jaylen Brown, Derek White, Marcus Smart, and possibly multiple first round picks. It's been reported. So, and I don't think Boston wants to include Marcus Smart in that deal.
Yeah, that's what I
So,
had read was that they were willing to part ways with Brown, Derek White, and the picks, but they didn't want to include Marcus Smart as well.
right. So as a Boston fan, I thought of you right away and I texted you this morning and I was like, I bet you're not happy about this. So please indulge me on your thoughts.
At first, because obviously months ago, this idea had already been contemplated by a lot of people out there, especially when there was all the chatter when the Celtics were struggling. Can Brown play with Tatum? Should we trade Brown? All that stuff. So that thought of moving him had been something that the team had contemplated and I internally had thought about many times. And to your point, he's still so young and so unbelievably talented and athletic, and he's such a good defender. You're almost never going to want to move a guy like that. And knowing that he and Tatum are growing together, my initial inclination was no, we can't do that. But then as I lie there, unable to sleep last night thinking about this, and at the end of the day, the NBA, especially with the Boston Celtics and knowing the rivalry with the Los Angeles Lakers, it's always a battle to see who's going to win the most. Both teams have 17 championships right now. The Celtics only got one with KG, Pierce, and Allen. They should have had two, but they only got one, and that's the only title that they've had in this century. I think I might actually entertain that. It is a lot. I don't know if I would necessarily part ways with Smart because that's reliant on Brogdon to come in and have to be. I mean, he's capable of doing it. And then you'd look at what Tatum, Brogdon, and KD with some role players. But I don't know if that's any better than the depth that this Celtics team has
Right.
now.
I
I
know.
mean, after the offseason moves that they made, Danilo Gallinari as their ninth best player on the team. I feel like because they were so close to winning a title last year and they clearly improved already from last year, I'd want to see what this team can do, even though it is still enticing. The idea of Kevin Durant, I mean, he's one of the 15, 20 greatest players of all time. Some people have him top 10. I don't, but I have him in my top 20. And it's, adding a piece like that is not something you have to, at the very least, think long and hard about it.
I mean, how often do you get to trade for a player like Kevin Durant? Has 4 years left on his deal. I mean, like we had Brian Windhorst on the Rich Eisen show this morning, and he said that this deal just doesn't come around often at all. To have a player, it's not like the Paul George where he didn't have a ton of years left, and Kawhi Leonard only signed like a 1 year deal with the Raptors. And Kevin Durant has a 4 year deal, but I mean the injuries. I mean he's got like how old is he?
He'll
34.
be 34,
Oh,
and he had
jeez.
the Achilles from a couple of years ago,
Right.
and he had was it an ankle this year? It cost him like a month and change or something
Mm-hmm.
like that.
Yeah.
I mean,
I
he's
mean, when
getting
he's
older, and the
yeah,
injuries are definitely creeping up.
Yeah, it's just I don't know. Like I mean, you're taking away a lot of depth. I mean, you're starting. Yeah, I mean, just like you said, your starting five would be Brogdon, Durant, Tatum, Time Lord, and Horford with a bench of Danilo Gallinari, Grant Williams, and
That Peyton Pritchard.
yeah.
Yeah, yeah. No, I
But
mean that.
but maybe they do that, and maybe they get some, you know, some vet minimums that you could get,
I
like a
almost wonder though, because
Markeith Morris or something off the.
I almost wonder if part of the posturing and the negotiation is to try to also detract KD from Miami, because once Phoenix signed, or once DeAndre Ayton signed his offer sheet with Phoenix, essentially taking them out of the KD sweepstakes,
Right.
the Miami Heat were the team that most people believed would be the ones to land Kevin Durant. And if you had KD with Jimmy Butler, and knowing they pushed us to 7 last year without Hero anyway, so if they deal
Right.
him, so be it. That's going to be a really tough team for this Celtic squad to beat.
Right.
So I almost wonder if, maybe that's part of the tactic here from the Celtics. Even if they don't go through with it, it's stalling conversations elsewhere. And then maybe it allows some other team to come in and buys them time to come in and land a deal.
Well, I think the Miami Heat probably. I think the Brooklyn Nets. It makes sense because they're talking about like Tyler Hero is in the deal. Tyler Hero. I think the Nets probably want Bam Adebayo. That's probably who I think they want. And the Heat are like, no. So that's probably who they want because it doesn't like. Sure, you get Tyler Hero and Duncan Robinson and picks for Kevin Durant. It's like, I think
That's
you want to
not
get.
even close to
Yeah,
the packages of what Boston was offering, even without
right.
Smart.
Brooklyn probably wants Tyler Hero, Bam Adebayo, Duncan Robinson, and like 3, 4 first round picks. That's probably
Yeah,
what they want.
yeah.
So I get it from Boston side, but I do also think that like what Tatum and Brown had together, like kind of showcased Tatum as being like the star of that team. So if you bring Kevin Durant in, does that kind of ruin Tatum's progression as being like the man in Boston? Because he'd have to take a step back to Durant because Durant's not going to be the second guy.
Yeah.
So like
That's
I
a
don't
good point.
know, and I feel bad for Jason Tatum too because it's just like I mean he's always been floated around in rumors, and it's
Or you
like
mean Jaylen
he's
Brown?
yeah. I'm sorry, who did
Yeah.
I say?
Tatum.
No, Jaylen Brown. Like he's been thrown around, and he put a shake in my head tweet when ESPN reported that he was in a deal. So like I know it's part of the business, but as a player, it can't feel good to know that you're being shopped. And I mean, for me personally, like if I was a player and I knew I was being shopped, I mean, it wouldn't feel good, especially when you went to the finals and
And you were the team's best player in the finals.
yeah, it's a sign of just disrespect. But I know
I
it's part
agree.
of the
And I
business.
almost it's one of those things in sports too where I wonder when these negotiations are going on, how are Windhorse and some of these guys, like if I'm the organization and or the agent, I guess the
Mhm.
information's got to be coming from the agent, right?
Right. Yep.
Leak that
Hmm.
information out there.
Yeah.
That way you express other interest.
Yeah.
And it must be with the understanding from the team you're negotiating with. They must fully understand that like this is going to get out, right? And you just have to be okay with it and
Yeah.
hope that your player isn't too butthurt.
And the thing about it is based on these players' responses, they seem completely in the dark because like this stuff comes out, and then unless they're just sending cryptic tweets, that all fans like just eat up. But like some of these guys don't even know. They find out from Woj. So you think that like their agents would keep them in the loop of what's happening, but I don't know. But I mean, like we'll see. I mean, I'm sure we'll be talking about that next week. But as far as this week goes, it's a lot of stuff to take in. But going forward, like we're getting into another week of a long summer with no football and no hockey, no basketball. So we're gonna definitely get into talking about more football stuff. Obviously, talking about training camp and who's doing what and who's saying what. But maybe we can get into maybe some future rookie of the year projections on who we like, MVP projections. We could also talk about division winners because I know we did talk about the AFC West on who we like. I like the Raiders. You like the Broncos. So it would be cool to kind of go, maybe a couple divisions at a time and talk about why we like who team and look at schedule and see how that could play out. So we have a lot of stuff to get into over the next 3 or 4 weeks. But football, man, football is here. It's going to be here before you know it, and we'll definitely keep you updated on all the NBA stuff because you never know. You know, you got to wait for that Woj or Shams tweet, and then the whole
Yep.
NBA blows
That's
up.
what
But
we live in nowadays.
exactly. But yeah, man, great show. Really, really fun.
Yeah, absolutely.
So thanks for listening, and we will see you guys next week.